The 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion into Ukraine is being marked this weekend as Ukraine continues to push for more support from its Western allies.
Your fight is our fight.
The Prime Minister marked the anniversary by traveling to Ukraine, highlighting more than $2 billion in military aid so far and $9 billion of total aid. He pledged to continue that aid as long as it takes for Ukraine to win the war. Another recent show of support earlier this month, the House of Commons passed legislation to implement an updated free trade agreement with Ukraine, despite opposition from the Conservatives. The Tories say they voted against the deal because of language in it around promoting a price on carbon. But recent polling from Angus Reid shows waning support, particularly among Conservatives, for sending high levels of aid to Ukraine. I spoke to International Trade Minister Mary Ng on Friday, just before the Prime Minister's visit. Hi, Minister. Good to see you. Thanks for making the time.
I'm thrilled to be here. Always good to talk to you, Vashi.
Your government announced new sanctions this week on Russia in light of the death of Alexei Navalny. Do you believe they ultimately will deter Vladimir Putin, given all the sanctions levied so far by not just Canada, but other Western allies have yet to do so?
Well, I think it's really important to keep doing the work and keep putting the pressure on. I mean, we are now almost at the 2-year mark of the anniversary of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And Canada has been doing its work standing side by side with Ukraine in defending, in helping them defend against this illegal and unjustified war.
I guess, though, my question is more about the potential success of those efforts. And obviously, Canada is not alone here. You know, all Western allies have levied the sanctions, for example, have been providing aid. There's some aid stuck in the U.S. right now. Ultimately, though, last week, for example, Russia had its biggest territorial gain in the last 9 months. Alexei Navalny still died. Russia is still marking victories of sorts in this war. What does that say about the efforts of allies like Canada?
I think what it says is that this aggression is very real, and Russia and the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin continues to exert what they are doing, like in Ukraine. I think that what you're painting there is a picture where defending democracy and supporting Ukraine is more important than ever. And you've seen our government do it. Now, heading into 2 years, it's over $9 billion worth of support to Ukraine, whether it's military support, humanitarian assistance, or welcoming Ukrainians here in Canada. In my case, negotiating and modernizing a free trade agreement, which is really important to Ukraine.
I want to ask some more about the free trade agreement that you referenced, the one that you oversee as the Minister of International Trade, because it's become a very debated domestic political issue as well. The Tories voted against that deal, something that your party maligned, that countered with. They said it was because of the inclusion of language around promoting a carbon price. I wanted to ask you bluntly, Minister, was the insertion of that language at the behest of Canadian trade negotiators or Ukrainian?
Let me just start by saying that Ukraine already has a price on pollution. They've had it there since 2011. And when you negotiate at the table, you've got both sides who are there negotiating. And Ukraine wants to better align its policies with that of the European Union. This agreement's going to do that. Having strong environmental provisions will certainly help that effort as well. But when I think about why is it so important to have this? I mean, I said it already. It's certainly to help the rebuild effort, but I am worried about the cracks that we are seeing in that support for Ukraine, with the Conservatives not supporting this agreement.
Certainly, and I'm not absolving the Conservatives of accountability on this issue. I've asked them a number of questions. I've also asked the Ukrainian ambassador, who, as you point out, is supportive of the inclusion of that language because it does align with the EU. That doesn't take away, though, Minister, from the fact that you didn't answer the question that I posed, which was the insertion of that language at the behest of your government or Ukraine? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you, because the framing from the Conservatives is that you inserted this language, that your government inserted this language because of your ideological focus on the carbon tax at all costs, at all prices. Is that the case? Did your government insert this language, or was it at the behest of the Ukrainians?
When you have negotiations, you're talking about a whole range of things. You're talking about how to how to create greater opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses to get into each other's markets. You're talking about how to increase services, service provisions. How do you, protect investors and all the, and that. And our agreements, Canadian agreements, are stronger agreements because of strong provisions that actually protect workers, and strong provisions that actually make you more competitive because of your respect for the environment. So this is something that both Ukraine and Canada wants. It was discussed as part of the negotiation.
And I understand that, but for example, when you say that that's not the way that negotiations happen, I've covered a lot of different trade agreements in which, Canada put forth a very specific position or a number of things around labor or Indigenous people, clauses that they specifically wanted inserted in the trade agreement. Are you saying that it just came from discussions that this was inserted? And again, I'm not asking you out of any glibness. I'm asking you because the Conservatives have framed this as your government specifically putting it in here because you want there to be a carbon tax everywhere. And you're saying that was not the case. You did not push this. The Ukrainians brought it up. Who did?
We did it together. We did it together. And just because the Conservatives want to deny that climate change exists or that climate, or having strong provisions in for the environment actually make trade and commerce stronger is something that they're going to need to answer for. But we are attracting record investments in Canada. Why? Because we actually have a plan for the environment.
Okay, Minister, before we go, I wanted to ask about another file under your purview, and that is the potential for free trade with India. Those negotiations were going on until, of course, the accusation levied against the government in that country by our government around the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Are trade negotiations with India still completely off?
They continue to be paused, but I would say that I am heartened to see that the activity between Canadian enterprises and in India continues, and we are seeing encouraging signs of of the investigation that is taking place, of course, independently.
Can you be clear, because I think there are a lot of people watching today who do business with India or vice versa. What is the resumption of those trade talks contingent on?
Well, we haven't made any decisions at this point, and I will see my counterpart, when I get to the WTO later, in the next couple of days. We will continue to, talk to one another, of course.
What are the conditions, though? Is it that India is cooperating? Because the former National Security Advisor Jody Thomas said on this program that they are now cooperating. Is it that they cooperate in the investigation, or that the investigation comes to a conclusion?
We are in regular dialogue, and this is something that I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can, looking after Canadian interests first and foremost, and I think Canadians can count on me for doing that.
Respectfully, Minister, that's not an answer. I'm just trying to figure out on behalf of people who are very much or were counting on this free trade agreement, if you plan to resume it, and on what conditions. Is it explicitly tied to the accusation against the government of India when it comes to the death of that Sikh leader?
No, it isn't. I mean, both that investigation is very important, and it must go on, and that work must go on. I will continue to support Canadian businesses that are doing business in India. I will continue, working on this, and when the conditions are right, we will pursue it at that time.
So again, though, can you define those conditions? If this isn't explicitly tied to that investigation, then what are the conditions that would presuppose the resumption?
It is work that is ongoing, and I'll,
I don't know what that means.
I will share with the Canadian public and with you more when I have more to share.
So you don't have a specific set of conditions under which you would resume those talks. Is that what I can interpret?
I think what you can interpret is that I'm happy to share more when I'm able to, and right now I've given you all of the update that I'm able to.
Okay, I appreciate that. Minister, thank you very much for making the time for the conversation, and safe travels.
Good. Thanks so much, Vashi.
When we come back today, Canada in the hot seat at NATO. There are new and louder calls for Canada to set a timeline to meet its commitment of spending 2% of GDP on defense. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Julianne Smith will join me after a quick break to talk about that